Welcome to Straight No Chaser, and I'm here with my co-host today.
Hi, how's it going? We're back at it this week. I'm Jake. Got
And I'm
Alex and
Alex.
V.
So today we want to start off with. I wanted to start off actually because I've always been super passionate about stand-up comedy. I grew up watching stand-up comedians with my dad, and I also thing our family always did together was during dinner we would watch The Daily Show, and I want to talk about the legacy of Jon Stewart at The Daily Show. A lot of people say he was like liberal propaganda. I disagree. The man just made jokes and called bullshit where he saw it. But even if you think Jon Stewart was liberal propaganda, the amount of comedians he brought up underneath him are legendary. He brought up so many amazing writers, stand-up comedians, and what's ironic is now a few of the people he made in comedy give us more factual news than actual like Fox News. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I know you're going to get into all the people that came out of the show later, but it's absolutely true. I found like Jon Stewart's program on Comedy Central was way ahead of its time. Like there wasn't even really an activist movement on the left. I thought MSNBC was corporate at the time, and Jon Stewart actually brought about like a progressive grassroots way of viewing the news, and I thought it was drastically overdue. Like he would just call out arrogance or misinformation on topics. He didn't care what side of the spectrum you are. He just cared about calling out bullshit, and that was the best part of his program.
Yeah, super humane guy. That's what drew me to him. He cares.
Yeah,
Alex,
absolutely.
did you watch the Daily Show?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I was always a big fan of that show. I thought he was really that's why I thought he was really one of the leaders in political comedy and satirical comedy because he was able to kind of bring actual news and actual intelligent conversation with comedy because he was able to make jokes, he was able to kind of make fun of stuff, and that kind of brought more attention to it in doing that. And he's actually also a great kind of journalist in the sense that he's like a great interviewer as well. Like he's interviewed multiple different people on the show, and they've been some of the best interviews I've seen. So
Yeah, one thing I found super ironic is that Bill O'Reilly and Jon Stewart are actually close friends in real life, but like you see them on their shows and the debates, and it looks like they absolutely hate each other.
yeah,
I love their debates, though. Oh my god,
yeah,
they're.
They're
I feel
so
like
funny.
Stewart always walks all over Riley, but I mean, who am I to judge?
I also think it's funny because like at the time I felt like those two were like the bully pulpits of the two networks, and like
Yeah,
they were like the two big like Goliaths of both sides of the spectrum. So it was always fun to see them, and then the fact that they're friends afterwards is kind of cool.
yeah.
It was always
It's like
entertaining to watch.
it's kind of weird because it's like these guys were like media figureheads for like being complete opposites. Maybe that kind of plays into the way people started to view politics. You know, it came up right around the time where stuff started to diverge. But like, I think it's pretty ironic that as these guys are the figureheads for two different sides, like they're still friends. They can have heated debate and still be like just enjoy hanging out.
The networks could learn a thing or two, maybe.
Yeah, I remember in like one
literally.
debate, O'Reilly was like, "Mr. Stewart here." He was like, "Mr. Stewart, what are you talking about?"
It's like call me John. Hurts my
Yeah,
feelings. Stuff was awesome. Yeah, I always love when they went on each other's programs too. Stewart is so funny. He's like he can be off the cuff funny too. If he goes on O'Reilly's program, he'll make O'Reilly's viewers laugh. Like I remember in one of the interviews he did in the O'Reilly Factor, the cameramen are actually laughing like during the set. Like they couldn't shut up because it was so funny.
but moving on a bit, for those of you comedy fans out there, I just wanted to just give you a list to show like the total magnitude of the people that Jon Stewart brought up. So Stephen Colbert from 99 to 2005, John Oliver from 2007 to 2013, Hassan Minaj. He has the Patriot Act on Netflix now. John Oliver has Last Week Tonight on HBO. His YouTube videos are free to watch, super informative, great show. Wyatt Cenac has problem areas. Also came up in the Daily Show, like just comedy powerhouse. Then in terms of stand-up, there's Michelle Wolf, Trevor Noah, and Michael Che. What I didn't know was Michelle Wolf actually worked at Bear Stearns from 2006 until 2008. For those of you who are into finance, Bear Stearns was the first major investment bank to go under. She landed on her feet, though. She worked at J.P. Morgan after that. So it's pretty wild. Yeah.
That's pretty
And then, yeah, just for those of you that appreciate stand-up, Michelle Wolf, Trevor Noah, Michael Che, amazing stand-up. For those of you looking for like real informative, honest stuff, John Oliver, Wyatt Cenac, Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah's good at both.
Yeah.
That man is amazing at arguing too. I was watching a video on it. So it's called Socrates Principle. I forget exactly what the definition of it is, but like he always remains cool, calm, and collected. He makes, even if someone totally disagrees with him, he makes them feel important. Like he can argue with someone in a heated debate and still make them want to be his friend at the end of it. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, I've seen that because he has people on his show before of like very opposing views, and he'll kind of like, he's not like one of those people. I feel like a lot of those shows have kind of just come. I don't know, a lot. It's not a lot of them, but there's some shows now that used to be. I feel like are like kind of more open-minded towards their guests, but now it's kind of almost like people don't want to go on those shows because they know like they're just gonna get ridiculed by the audience.
Yeah.
Like this kind of like almost like how Stephen Colbert's show is now. Like it used
like
to be a lot more.
Bill Maher.
Yeah,
I would
Bill
hate
Maher.
to be a conservative on Bill Maher. Like Bill Maher just absolutely thrashes every idea you have.
Yeah, which is funny though because he's like one of the most closed-minded people ever.
He's so closed-minded. I don't get how people like love that.
Yeah, he's like I'm a liberal, and he's like, but I hate like half the shit like you like are talking about.
The list is kind of a testament to Jon Stewart, though. And like an analogy, it's kind of like a system he's created, like the Patriots, where they just cranked out 6 championships and coaches get stolen. It's like the writers get stolen from the Daily Show because of what it meant to culture at the time and how popular it was.
I mean, my best analogy lately is I've been watching MasterChef and Hell's Kitchen. What Gordon Ramsay does, people think he's a dick, but what he's doing is he's taking like regular cooks and turning them into like Michelin level chefs. That's not easy to do. Most Michelin chefs aren't fucking nice guys. Like, I don't know why people think like chefs are so nice.
No, I've heard it's like the kind of stress people, like anyone who's worked in the restaurant industry, the kind of stress people like endure and stuff. It's like that, like way hyper, like way more hyped up.
Especially when you're working for fine dining. In fine dining, like if you give a high-level chef something that's not right, you're probably getting berated. Like they probably insult you down to like the very last little particle of your body. Like,
yeah, no, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. It's definitely not for everybody, but it takes a lot of like, it's a kind of a very commanding and a very kind of critical and stressful.
It's just pure passion. It takes pure.
It's a lot of passion. Yeah, it's a lot of passion. A lot of discipline.
You have to work 7 days a week as a chef in a restaurant. You have to work nonstop. Like as you're coming up, once you make it, yeah, you get time to like go do other things and like form a restaurant group and appoint other chefs. But while you're coming up, you have no personal life whatsoever. Because restaurants got to make money. They run 7 days a week.
Agreed, it's true. Especially if you want to go anywhere in their career, you definitely have to
My
show up
favorite
every
thing
day.
Gordon Ramsay does, he goes like, "You donkey," or if he gets like raw fish or like raw lamb, he's like, "It's so fucking raw, it could still swim."
Yeah, he's like the cow's still mooing. You have to kill it with a knife. He's
I
always
love
like
when he
that
makes. I love when he makes them come over to the table. He's like, "Everyone, come here!" And he's like, "Look at that, fucking bad."
Yeah, he sends it back. He always sends it back, and then you can just see how heated the chef's getting.
He'll just like slap it on the table.
They're so insulted because it is such a passionate thing. So like they always get so tense whenever
The
Gordon
thing is,
like
so like when he came out of culinary school, if he worked for a top tier chef, that's how he was treated at a Michelin level restaurant. Like that's what the chef is going to do to you. So he's taking these people who work at like normal restaurants, like the restaurants we can get jobs at that don't require like a rigid schedule. So like it's very different culture, and like people say he's a mean guy, but he's done marvels for a lot of people. Like he's brought a lot of young people up to become really amazing chefs.
he's definitely an effective guy, but he does have a temper though.
Just like Jon Stewart has done for comedy.
Yeah, that's true, but Jon Stewart is just like very like he takes a very laid back approach,
Yeah,
but
he's
also
very
a
even
very
keeled.
straightforward approach. So.
Yeah.
I just think Jon Stewart's anti-bullshit at his core. That's kind of what I like about him, with his satire.
Yeah, he's really down to earth.
Yeah.
Really, like,
he is.
He doesn't like try to fit in any narrative. You know?
Yeah, he doesn't have a bias.
He respects other people. He tries to see where other people are coming from. I feel like a big issue is like a lot of people who don't really see life that way. They see life like we're living, everyone's living in their world. It's not everyone, like every single one of us sees the world as like this, like from our own perspective. But some people just don't recognize like other people have their own perspective. They're like, it's my world.
You know what's a great point of like view that I always mention? When you're a kid, you don't think about like people's differences and like how you would treat people differently ever. Like when you're a kid, it's so genuine. You don't even really notice those type of things, which is why it's just so sad that when people grow up, they like get all these small-minded points of views, and then it's counterintuitive to productivity. It's like
Let's say the other side of being a kid is there are times where you choose to follow like something that's like core, like you choose to follow something you don't really understand, but like some people just follow it for so long it becomes a core, it becomes integrated with like who they are, instead of like some like you can make your own decisions and like decide that, yeah, but there are some things that like as a kid you don't recognize like this is wrong, you just follow it.
I was just thinking like a child's mentality towards other people is kind of like way more pure than some
yeah, that's for sure.
No, it is. I mean, that's what they always say about like prejudice and closed-mindedness. It's always taught. It's never like taught. People up.
Yeah, it's always taught.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of unfortunate.
There's actually a great documentary on Netflix called Flint Town. It's about the police department in Flint, Michigan. It's a docu-series. It's my favorite docu-series I've ever watched. Like, I've seen Dirty Money and Planet Earth, all the Planet Earths and the Cosmos. Flint Town is amazing because it shows, like, a police force trying to hold a town together as it crumbles apart because the water source was poisoned with lead by the local government. Like, the other thing, one cop says, like, so, like, we see a cop as, like, maintaining the balance, and, like, so do others, but, like, one kid who grew up here in the Midwest, and, like, his daddy taught him to hate other people's way of life. Like, how do you change that once he becomes a cop? You can't.
Yeah, it's tough. That's part of the issue we're seeing. You know what's funny though? The Flint police actually, I believe the way they do things is very different from a lot of other places. Like, did you see they were marching with the protesters recently?
Yeah.
like
I think
alongside the protesters.
I think that's kind of what a cop should do, though, because like police are expected to do too much right now. I remember John Oliver was talking about that on his latest episode about policing. But like the thing is, we should divulge some of the police resources into like mental health and other institutions that would help the communities, not just because policings can't be like the only local representation for the public. They have to have resources that they can go out and seek guidance from.
Exactly. Like, police are expected to do some of the most random dumb shit like anyone's ever heard of. Like, look for lost pets. Like, it's your responsibility to keep track of a pet when you fucking buy it. Like, cops are supposed to maintain the community. Why is a cop spending, like, you're paying your tax dollars for this top cop to go find some neighbor's dog? Like, what?
Like, and that's the other thing. It's like cops shouldn't be expected to be therapists. Like, not every problem is police related. So, like, depending on the seriousness of the issue, like, shouldn't it go to like a therapist or?
Yeah.
No, it's true. There's a lot of stuff. So many things that people call the police on for that are just not necessary, and it just escalates the whole tension and leads to violence. Like a lot of these like situations where the cops have been called on like the littlest thing could literally just be avoided if people actually knew how to talk to each other and be social and try and discuss like their like what their like beliefs are,
But
and like
then
how they
again,
can try and work it out.
you have these departments that aren't corrupt, and you have these guys that do everything right and follow the rules, and now all of a sudden, the real bad motherfuckers are being recorded all the time, and now everyone's like, defund the police.
I'm of the mindset though that there does need to be huge reforms in policing.
Yeah, there really does.
I think the police get too much money in a lot of places in this country, and I also think that they get way too much. Just like they get put out, they get military grade weapons, which just seem like unnecessary.
Yeah,
and
they don't need military
I
grade
saw a
weapons.
thing in a lot of countries in like Europe, the police will get 2 or 3 years training, and some even need like a degree in order to become a cop. Here, it's like less than a year, and then they'll just go out there with a gun, and they always just like they just don't really teach. I feel like in a lot of parts of the country, at least, they don't teach to like de-escalate. They kind of just say,
not taught to
we had a
they're
great
taught
point
to
on
meet a quota. They're taught to meet a quota, and
Yeah,
that
like
always leads to escalating the situation.
exactly. They're way too. It's like they won't let you question their authority. It's like even like joking around a lot of the time is like seen as bad.
The other
I just
thing
think
is like
it's
they don't
ridiculous.
need Miltech gear either, because like I remember you mentioning this, there's a local SWAT department too. So it's like police shouldn't be geared up like this. If you need a no knock warrant to go search a house that you think has incredibly violent intentions, or like
That's not a detective's job. That's a SWAT team's
that's a SWAT job.
That's not a beat cop's job either. A beat cop should not be executing a no-knock warrant.
Yeah, agreed.
SWAT teams take years of tests and training to get that kind of like advanced level with weapons.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just think policing needs a ton of reforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think SWAT teams are like the elite of the police force. Like they go through years of training.
Generally, I'm not super inclined to say I like support affirmative action like broadly, but I think in policing it's super important, because if your police force doesn't actually represent the local population, it makes no sense to me. How are you going to gain community trust if your police force is 90% white and your community is 30% black?
Well, that's the other
I
thing.
agree with
Like,
that. It's a
Flint
huge
PD
thing, I
is
think.
different, right? Because it's super diverse. There are black people, white people, Hispanic people, and you see that in the documentary. That's why they're different. That's why they were like a police department that actually cared about the community.
Yeah, agreed.
And then you got all these people screaming, defund the police, and then what happens to those guys? You know, they get fucked. But then again, there are a lot of departments that should be like completely.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think defund most of the time. Defund most of the time just means they just should cut the budget and give it more towards education and stuff.
It's about figuring out how to target the towns with terrible police departments, I guess.
I think they need to cut the federal police budget too, if I'm being brutally
I'm saying
honest.
the police, like if you looked, I looked also at the LA.
Yeah, it should be locally funded. I think it should be locally funded.
Yeah, even like in the city councils in like LA and like other major cities, like in New York, it's and in Chicago, it's like so much money goes to the police, and not in like it's like so much more even than that's going to the school systems and like
Yeah, that's the thing too.
public
Crime. You know what's the
places.
number one crime prevention tactic is to actually educate your populations.
Yeah, and
There's
also get them
a
like
direct
get them.
correlation to level of education to reduced crime. It's like, why wouldn't
Yeah,
you make it
education
simplest?
definitely helps in like community services and community programs, like community centers where people
But
can
I
like do
think
things.
since the '80s, education has been the first thing the federal government pulls from to fund other things. Like since the
Yeah,
'80s,
it
the
was
federal
big.
government has only pulled money out of education.
It was during
Like
Ronald Reagan's presidency.
why
I
would
think
you
the U.S.
why would you de-invest in your country's future? Like why would you take money out of the future of your country?
The U.S. should run data sets and find out what the lowest testing scores areas of the nation are, and then invest all the money that they use to defund a segment of the police federally. They should put that into education in those areas with
That would
reduced
be a cool
scores.
plan.
It would make sense. I mean, honestly, it's just like the two indications. I guarantee you crime rates would drop if you just made that simple change.
Yeah.
But fuck funding education. We'd rather.
So the next topic that has really been in the news, not just in the United States but around the world lately, is people basically protest groups that says like arisen, I don't know, arisen with the recent
Risen.
risen, yeah, that probably makes sense. Risen with
Something
the
in my pants has arisen.
okay. But yeah, so another thing that has we've seen in America, the United States and all around the world um is uh is people basically because of these protests against institutionalized racism, they're like tearing down and vandalizing a lot of statues and memorials that they believe have racist connotations. Now, of course, this has been like a controversial thing for years now, and like the big event that kind of like predated this was like in 2017. They like the Charlottesville protests where it was like those white nationalists came out of the woodworks to like protest like Confederate statues being dismantled, and then that became like it's been a thing even before that because like there's been a lot of like instances of this happening earlier in U.S. history where we don't want to honor Confederate generals, and then it's also like a thing like I said in Europe, like there's a lot of statues that would come from during fascist or communist regimes that were like torn down. So, but the thing is, the controversial part of this is it this the correct way to handle things? Should we be destroying statues, or should we do something else like move the statues, or should we just leave them there because it's history and everyone should learn, or should we put them somewhere else for people to learn, or should we replace them? That's like the controversy because many people think destroying statues kind of is just like disrespect and like kind of just like denies history that's already there. But yeah, that's kind of the big controversial thing. Because then there's also the whole kind of topic about what if it's somebody who's done a lot of bad things, but also a lot of good things. Like we're gonna honor FDR. He was one of the best presidents for the modern United States history, but he also approved the Japanese internment camp. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah,
someone like Churchill, even more controversial. Churchill, um,
he was a war
he
hawk.
yeah, he literally was horrible in India and South Asia. As far he didn't care for those people at all. He like and reinforced the British colonial rule over there. Yeah, he wasn't like he was against the Irish people as well. And but then he also like was one of the major leaders in World War II, fighting against Hitler, and then after World War II, fighting against Stalin. So there's a lot of it's like people find it very controversial. So I was just like interesting to hear any of your thoughts on that.
So I'm gonna take away. I do think they should remove the statues from the public, but I do think they should transfer them to a museum because it is part of history, and I think they should be replaced. Only because like I think society should be built upon principles that the current public believes in, and I feel like a lot of the Confederacy's values are very outdated, and obviously the current public I'm sure there are some that do believe them, the crazies, but I just think it's time. It's time for the statues to get torn down. Send them to the Smithsonian. Send them where you got to send them. Put them on display. It's still an artwork, but I don't think they should be on display in the public, even in the South.
I mean, adding on to that, I would support taking statues out of the public and putting them in museums for the most part. I think some statues kind of should be destroyed. But overall, I I'm definitely more in favor of putting statues in museums because how can we learn if we don't learn from history? History is one of the best teachers out there because we see where past generations have gone. Now it's time for us to not make the same mistakes.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, what some people argue though is you kind of read about history still because they say like there's no statues of Hitler anymore, and there's at least very few of Stalin. There's none of
But
Genghis
then
Khan.
again, yeah, a statue doesn't really give you a fucking history lesson at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's still like honor. So
Yeah.
But so yeah, no, I think definitely not in the public. I think it's like ridiculous that we do still have Confederate statues out in the public because people like African Americans and other minorities grow up in these towns, like in Charlottesville. Charlottesville, I'm pretty sure, has a large black population, and they grow up and they just see this guy there, like just towering above them. Like, how would that make someone feel?
Exactly.
I don't like that. I don't like
I'm
that
totally
treatment.
in support with like that statue being taken down, honestly.
And it's true too in parts of like Africa, like Cecil Rhodes, who is known for being one of the biggest enforcers of British colonialism in South Africa and Rhodesia. That he had a statue that was also just recently removed in South Africa. I support that as well. He was very racist and kind of justified eugenics.
I really think it's up to historians to start getting accurate historical books into educational systems all around the world. But like you look at America right now with DeBoss as Secretary of Education, she's putting back books that are saying like the Bible was like factually accurate, like historical books.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Like,
that's you can't be denying
It's
anybody
mind-blowing.
knowledge. See, that's the thing where this is where I also stand is because I believe strongly in like the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and I don't think there should really be any laws preventing speech unless it's something specifically violent, like they're trying to initiate an attack on people. But at the same time, people have to know that if you're going to say something hateful, there's still going to be like repercussions from other people against it. Like you're not protected then from getting like if you're going to say something racist, you're allowed to because of our constitution, but also nothing, in my opinion, protects people from coming out there and like harassing you about it. You know?
Not only that, but we should be getting a history of our entire planet. Like dinosaurs die and their societies rose from rivers because rivers gave you access to water. From those places, they started to trade from the places nearby Middle East region, and like we don't learn that history. I learned that history from like YouTube videos on the internet. Like our history books don't teach us that. Why aren't those history books
No, it's true.
taught to us?
Plus, we don't learn. We pretty much exclusively learn about. We learn an extensive
The
amount of
Romans and
American
Greeks.
history. Yeah, well, we
Romans,
learn
Greeks,
American history.
and then the American Civil War and
Yeah,
Revolutionary.
we learned Europe too, but yeah, other than Europe, we'll learn a little bit. I learned a bit about Egypt and Mesopotamia, but I also was like into history.
What about
so I
the
took a lot of-
Mongols? That's like a quarter of the current
Yeah.
planet's population can be traced back to Genghis Khan.
Yeah,
Like
He's
those
a
guys
psycho.
literally had northern China, most of Russia, northern Middle East, all the way into like Romania, like in Turkey.
Yeah, Hungary too. Yeah,
Yeah. The Mongol
mean-
Empire was massive, but we know nothing about it.
you don't learn it. It was briefly mentioned. Like I said, when I took history, I took a lot of history classes too because I liked it, like as electives and stuff. But in the main classes, you literally just learned a ton about the United States and then Europe, and then briefly you'll learn about China or Japan or like ancient Egypt.
Like,
even, not
Rome
modern.
wasn't built in a day. The Mongol Empire fucking tripled the size of Rome.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to get back to Betsy DeVos and the her decision to put the pro-Bible material in textbooks, or was it just promote books with the Bible that said the Bible was factual? What exactly did she do again?
Well, I don't know exactly what she did, but I know like there are schools in certain states starting to enact.
See,
They're
this is
starting
my
to
problem
replace
with
old
it.
history books with the history books that aren't. They're not history books aren't improving in schools. They're getting more and more like one-sided view, and I think the boss is enabling that for a specific state.
That's what I'm about to say. I'm all for freedom of speech, but promoting your selected belief upon the general public is counterintuitive in what you're trying to have school systems adopt. I
No,
would.
it's wrong. You
That's
can't
why
put a
It's
religious
morally
text.
wrong. Like
It
it's
It
just
goes against the values we've instated as a community and a society, because literally the United States Constitution guarantees with its First Amendments that we have separation of church and state. Like,
yeah.
you
The
cannot
Pilgrims
enforce
came here for
religion on people.
religious freedom.
Yeah,
Religious
exactly.
freedom.
So I'm very against her move to do it. I do support those books being legal because I don't think that
They shouldn't be being taught in our school system.
that they shouldn't be being promoted by the Secretary of Education.
Exactly. Public education, especially. Like, if you go
Yeah.
to a private Catholic school, you choose to go to a
Sure.
religious
Yeah,
institution.
that's
But
fine.
public school, like, there's kids who are Muslim, there's kids who are Jewish. They should not be having to read about biblical stories, even though I guess those religions kind of have the similar stories. But still, kids maybe who are like Hindu or Buddhist should not have to read about anything that's based in like Judeo-Christian values.
And not only that, they're going to be tested on it.
Yeah, no, that's silly. But Betsy DeVos is really like one of the last people who should be even in that
Betsy
department.
DeVos is like, I think I'd put her in the league of like just as much of a crook as Trump, but I mean she's not as bad. She's not as bad. Well, like she is absolutely demolishing the educational systems in our country.
Well, she's like, isn't she for private education? Her big thing was she was going to change the voucher
she's
system.
for private education. Like,
yeah, so she doesn't care about public schools.
Yeah, see, that just defaces like all what like a public education stands for.
Yeah,
in
like
America.
the land of opportunity.
Right.
Has you ever heard those words? The land of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
No, she doesn't care. But no, back to the memorials and statues real quick. I just wanted to hear like the opinion. So what about like the ones I said that people think like it's somebody who's done a lot of good but also done some pretty horrible things. So not Columbus, for example, because the only thing Columbus really did good, for everyone who argues that he like discovered stuff, is all he did is disprove the flat Earth theory. He didn't discover shit.
I mean, Columbus
That was all he
affects
did good.
me, I think, pretty deeply because I'm Indian, and then I hate when people call natives Indians.
Yeah,
Indians come from fucking India. That's what makes us Indian. There's no other Indians. We're the only Indians.
Yeah, they don't like that shit.
Like, on top of that, they're Americans. The people he found here they were Americans. They were the original Americans. Like,
yeah.
And then they wiped them off the face of the earth and called them Indians, which they are not.
5 million in our country now.
I always think it's
identify at least.
My culture became civilized before Christopher Columbus. Before Christopher Columbus's great grandparents even fucking existed. Like,
yeah, but then speaking of your country, so if we're gonna talk about someone like Churchill, though, should we have a statue of him up? Because what he did in India was terrible. And what he did in other countries like Ireland or in parts of Africa and the Middle East, he kind of like didn't do anything making their issue better, kind of exacerbated the conflict there. So should we still have him up, though, because he's still considered a hero because of what he did?
But he is loved by his home country, you know?
Yeah, but hated by so many others. So does the statue stay or go? That's the controversy.
Winston Churchill?
Mm-hmm.
I think it should stay. I like World War II, so I don't really know the atrocities that he performed, to be honest, in all those nations, but I don't know.
I just say, but like Jake, like you look at war hawks in our Congress today and you hate them, but like Winston Churchill at that time during World War II, classic war hawk, you know?
Yeah, but if he hadn't been, we could have been all overrun by Nazism and communism.
Well, the Soviets fought. To be fair, the Soviets were pretty much equally as awful,
I
but
mean,
they also were the ones who fought the Nazis too. So they helped. They
economically, the
did help. It
Nazis
wasn't
would
all
not have been
Churchill.
able to sustain a takeover of the world. Like all these shows about Nazis winning World War II, like
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked. It would have
economically,
collapsed.
Germany could not sustain a war taking over that much land. They could not. There's no possible way they could afford it
But
or.
No,
if England,
that's the thing.
England had fallen though. That's why he was a wartime leader. I think he deserved it.
If they took England, England would be rubble. England would have been completely gone.
The only problem with
I
that,
don't know
though,
about
is because
that,
they
though,
were in the pact with the Soviets. Like they hadn't initiated
The
Operation
Soviets,
Barbarossa.
there's a whole thing because the Soviets were allies with the Nazis originally, and there's a lot of people who think that if Hitler hadn't invaded first, Stalin might have invaded Germany first. Like it was just bound to happen. But either way, that was more just like a wartime thing because Stalin was enemy of Churchill after the war. But either way, the Soviets still fought the Nazis a lot, so Churchill can't take all the credit for winning World War II. And also, the thing with Churchill is that he was like a war hero, but he also like the British that's probably one of the reasons they wouldn't have won World War II is because they still, even though Germany might have conquered Europe, Britain still had the rest of the world in its control. Like they took so many resources from all these other countries.
Sun didn't set.
That's literally, and that was even that was like a quote. Like
that was a couple generations before World War II.
Yeah, they like their imperialism was just like unreal, and I don't know. I feel
that was literally a generation or two before World War II.
Yeah, and it will continued up right up until World War One. Like they had like the biggest empire in the world, and they literally. But yeah, so I don't know. I think maybe not Churchill's guilty of all the crimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. Is it all on Churchill?
No, it's not all on Churchill.
No, it's not all on
Cecil Rhodes. People like Cecil Rhodes were way worse than Churchill. Didn't really do anything good. Or like Rudyard Kipling, like he wasn't just a proponent of it. And there's like people like that. But I'm saying Churchill just didn't do anything to make it better.
I'm gonna go a little off topic here, but like I feel like Victorian designs and interior decorating are so ugly. Why do people like them? I don't get it. I think they're like so hideous.
Like Victorian designs because it's British.
No, I like a lot of British stuff, but like I love.
Yeah, but you just somehow made that transition.
Yeah,
well, he's right.
Like Queen Victoria, like round gold chairs with like velvet in the center, like they don't look nice. They don't.
A lot of Victorian shit's dumb.
Yeah, it looks ugly. It looks outdated.
But shit goes out of style. We don't wear powdered wigs anymore.
Yeah.
Imagine, dude, that'd be crusty.
It's been a while. Like, move on. Like, update your house a bit. Like,
people like old shit, dude. Which like takes me back again to the statues. People like get their feelings hurt when old shit goes away.
Like, if you have a ton of money, don't get Victorian stuff. It's not classy. It's just ugly and outdated. Like,
it'd be kind of funny if, like, back then they were all minimalist and we're like over here, like, what the fuck do we do? They had so much fashion.
yeah. It's gonna come back. It's gonna come back soon, one day. Watch, in like 10 years, the fashion world will bring some shit that's like Victorian inspired back.
Shit goes back.
It's all a cycle. It's all a cycle.
What happened in the 90s? Explain 90s fashion. I can't.
Yeah, that was ugly.
80s was worse, I think. 80s.
No, 80s was sick,
fashion.
No, what the hell? They wore like bright ass colors. Yeah, you dressed like that.
Colors.
2000s was the worst time for American fashion.
Early 2000s was sick. What do you mean? Early 2000s was nice.
I feel like for fashion, we're probably the closest to the 70s right now. Like 70s fashion was sick. Also, cars were beautiful in the 70s.
Cars were beautiful, yeah.
Cars in the 80s were like flashy. But like
cars in the 80s, like late 80s and early 90s had ugly
cars.
In
the 90s,
look at the Mustang from 1990. It's a piece of shit. It's so ugly.
Yeah, the Mustang from like 90 to like 2004, hideous. Like cars in the 90s just looked ugly. There's like no two ways about it.
Yeah, they were
American cars, not European cars. European like BMWs from the 90s look nice.
Yeah. No, but I'd rather
Those
have
classic
like
one, like BMWs, the
BMWs
round
from the
nuts.
'80s look better. You know, the compact one I'm talking about. Those were sexy.
That's true.
Porsche 911 from like '67 blows them both out of the water.
I think my
That's true.
favorite old car is a 1970 Camaro. That
That's
like it's
classic.
just one clean grill.
Oh, that's such a classic
So
car.
nice. And then the
I feel like
headlights slide down. What happened
yeah,
to the what happened to cars like that where like the
the
headlights were
headlights go
covered
up and
during the
down.
day, then you turn them on and it just slides
Yeah, the
down and
Corvette used to do that for mad long. That was like
yeah.
like a Chevy thing. The
Well,
Corvette and the
no, with
Porsche.
Corvette they popped up,
Oh yeah, no, they
but the
popped up. Actually, that's a
Camaro would
Porsche
slide
thing. The
down.
Porsches they pop up.
Yeah,
That was just like yeah, people
that
used
was
to care
another
so much
Ferrari
more
and
about those little
Lamborghini did
details.
that in the '90s. Pop up headlights.
Yeah, Porsche did that. I feel like people used to care so much about little, like the Jaguars. I mean, I guess they still do, but they have like that little hood ornament, the little
Yeah,
Jaguar.
yeah.
I feel like people used to put so much more quality into cars,
Well,
especially in
back
like America and Europe.
back when cars were like back in like the 50s and 60s, Jaguar was like the top of the top. Like that was like the most
Yeah,
upper echelon of
and
car you
Rolls
could buy.
Royce too.
Yeah.
Rolls Royce was peaking back then
Yeah,
too.
but Rolls Royce is still there. Jaguar kind of fell off.
Yeah. What
Jaguars
is
are
the
Until
still kind of nice.
Tata
old
Motors
Jaguar?
bought them, until an Indian company bought Jaguar. Suck it, Britain.
Jaguar, aren't they still designed in England though?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
It's
But yeah,
just
no,
so the owner of Tata Motors basically bought him when they went bankrupt. But he
uh,
left. He left. In India and Britain have really good relationship now. I actually like Britain a lot.
that's
Like I'd
good.
totally be willing to like go there.
That's good. I mean, they owe it so for everything. But yeah, no, that is true. I think a lot
Yeah.
of what was I gonna say? A lot of cars too are produced. Well, they're usually designed in like one country, then are produced abroad. So that's usually what
Yeah.
happens. Like they get parts like from other places.
Yeah. I think the big issue with American cars today is just the engineers are nowhere near the level of foreign engineers. Like German engineers, Japanese engineers, and South Korean engineers, they build cars that don't break down after like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 miles. Like they all last longer
Oh,
than
they're
that.
really nice quality.
Like those cars from Germans and like Asian countries, they last 100,000 miles, and maybe you have to replace a part in between 0 to 100,000.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, Japanese cars are the best. In my opinion.
GM should have
I don't know.
failed multiple times, but
Honestly, I don't
Well,
know. I think yeah, Japan makes quality cars, but I feel like they always cared more just about like they cared more just about like durability and
yeah.
kind of like durability and like how like basically like durability, fuel efficiency, just yeah, efficiency in general and
Well, not only
durability.
that, like
yeah, so much to hate,
Toyota,
right?
Well, they
Toyotas.
don't care as much about like they don't care as much about like actual like high quality though. They're very cheap.
No, I disagree. You know, I can prove you wrong right now.
Wow.
Toyota's luxury brand is Lexus. If
Yeah.
you've ever been in a Lexus,
Yeah.
super comfortable seats, like super comfortable, wicked high gas mileage, and in the 2012 Lexus E350, that's their just regular family sedan, 350 horsepower
So I'm
Yeah.
talking
The thing
in
is,
a
I feel like
in a
Lexuses
Japanese imported sedan.
are they
On
imported
top
though?
of
I feel
that,
like
like
Lexus are made
25
more
miles
for
per
the
gallon.
Western market.
Yeah, but like 350 miles per gallon, or it gets
Yeah,
about
whoa,
25,
that's
no, 25 miles per gallon with 350 horsepower. Like, what American company can come up with something like that?
I mean, not American, but I feel like Audis have, or like Mercedes have that as well. And they're
Well,
just nicer.
yeah, the thing about German cars is they're very much about their drive. Like, you feel the car underneath you.
Yeah.
With Lexus, it's more about like smooth.
I think Japan makes the best cars for like if you're really just like looking for a car as like a normal consumer, I think you'd be wrong to not look at Japanese. cars.
Well, yeah, I'd say for
They
like
never
average
break.
people.
Like,
Because
yeah,
like cars in Europe or like German cars and British cars are always so expensive, and Italian cars too. So I would say
when they
for
break, they're
like
so
average cars, but for high performance, it's definitely Germany, Italy, and Britain who have the best cars.
yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, in Formula One, Ferrari and Mercedes are the two top performing companies right now.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're going to switch into the Supreme Court ruling that protected LGBTQ community members.
Finally, a win for America.
Yep. So this Monday, the court ruled in favor of. So they ruled in favor of not allowing workplace discrimination based on an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, and they used Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to have it prohibited. So this all began in 2013 when Gerald Bostock was fired from his child advocate job in Clayton County, Georgia, shortly after he joined a gay softball league. He then sued his former employer in 2016, and the case took years to find its way through the lower courts before reaching the Supreme Court for oral arguments last October.
What a surprise. It's not like he was from Georgia or anything.
So that is how the ruling went, and he is the only surviving plaintiff of the case, so he won, and big win for the LGBTQ community. I'm excited. I think everyone here is pro-freedom. I don't think that you should be able to fire someone for their sexual orientation.
So wrong. It's like the same thing as religion, race, or ethnicity. Like you just can't do that.
No, you can't.
Violation of the
human
rights.
That completely goes against our constitutional rights.
It does.
To be able to do that, to be able to fire someone for that, that is not constitutional.
Super authoritarian to be in favor of that too. Libertarians.
Super authoritarian. Exactly. Libertarians, no one wants people interjecting. No one wants government laws and regulations interjecting in personal people's lives, and also, companies should not dictate. Your employer has no business in your personal life either.
No. It's all about your work. It's like your personal life should not matter.
I mean, so wrong.
Depending on where you're working, as we get advanced in life, corporate politics and stuff plays a role. But for him, just being fired for coming out as gay, I guess, that's crazy. That's absolutely mind blowing.
It's a human rights violation.
It is.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the only case either. I didn't actually research the specifics, but there were a couple other cases where people got fired once their employers just found out they were gay, just like that. Just that should not be legal. You're jeopardizing a person's livelihood just for being themselves.
No, it's fine. I've even heard of cases where people have, for example, fired their employers, right, for stating that. I've heard of a case, I don't know where it was, but someone fired their employer actually for saying their employer posted something that was homophobic, and they said it was an abomination against their religion. I think it was at an IKEA actually, and the IKEA employer, the IKEA manager fired the employer for saying homophobic things, and that is it. And then the attorney actually is now trying the IKEA manager for being intolerant of that person's religion. That's how much of a clusterfuck it is. Yeah.
Yo, IKEA is an amazing company. As a company, IKEA is super cool.
I just want to get back on topic real quick before we go off. It was a 6-3 vote. And the big surprise was Neil Gorsuch, which was Trump's first nominated justice into the higher courts. He voted in favor.
Yeah.
I called it. I said Gorsuch wasn't such a bad pick. He was getting so much hate, but I really don't think Gorsuch was a bad pick.
He's not a bad. Kavanaugh is worse.
Yeah, Kavanaugh is
When I was a clown, bro, how can you yell like that in a trial? Like, and
Yeah,
then expect to
Supreme
get
Court
judged?
justice should not be yelling in a trial. They should not lose their temper like that ever.
Agreed. So
They're in
Gorsuch,
the highest court of the country.
Makes him
joined
look like such a clown. But yeah, go on.
Gorsuch joined Chief Justice John Roberts and the other courts for liberals. Or the courts for other for liberals. So big win. I'm excited. I just wanted to say that it was a 6-3 vote. Fuck Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, what a scumbag.
Um,
I probably shouldn't say that. He's a Supreme Court justice.
I don't know. I
No,
think
he's
throughout
bad.
this one out, and
He's
I
not a
think
good guy.
Neil Gorsuch made the right. He studied law at Columbia University, and I think he made the right choice on this one. I think
Yeah,
if
I agree too.
from a libertarian point of view and a like freedom of speech, and if you look at the Civil Rights Act of '64, I think this one's easy.
Or just like a fellow human who
Yeah,
respects
well, I mean, they don't do that shit though. They're in the
Like-
Supreme Court, they're in the Supreme Court. They only
Yeah.
really legislation and laws. That have
They're
been passed.
pure. They're like pure freaking law.
Yeah,
Just
like
at their heart, they're just like the law is everything.
Yeah.
Even
They
though-
literally-
How do 3 Supreme Justices go against that? Like, as like in the highest court of our country, there are 3 Supreme Court justices who said this is totally constitutional.
Yeah, no.
That
It's
is
literally because they get too
That is
political.
mind blowing.
they do get to.
They don't have political affiliations officially, but everyone knows who's a conservative and who's a liberal judge and who's libertarian and who's like sides with big government. Yeah. Everybody knows, so they pick them accordingly.
That's true. I mean, I think this was one reason I actually liked Buttigieg a lot, was he talked about reforming the Supreme Court, because like presidents can stack conservatives or liberals based on their Congress into the Supreme Court, and now all of a sudden it's very skewed to one side. And Buttigieg was talking about adding more justices, and it was a tougher process to get a Supreme Court justice into the Supreme Court. Because
I think it's ridiculous. It's lifetime appointments. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. In my
well, I
opinion.
know, because like Ruth Bader Ginsburg isn't that, like, she's still pretty, like,
Still,
if you look at a picture of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's kind of funny to watch. Like, all the Supreme Court justices, and she's like so old, but at the same time, she's still voting in terms of like humanity and like the country's progress.
Yeah, she's trying to push us forward, not make us go behind.
Exactly.
I still think it's bullshit though, only because like I just don't think someone who's served in the position for 40 years maybe is starting to have like some onset symptoms of dementia or
Yeah, that's a good point.
like any of those forgetful diseases should be on the higher courts. Or I really don't even think people past 70 should. I think they should be more in touch with the society.
Yeah.
It's kind of my point. I just think lifelong appointments are the worst. They're even worse than there not being term limits in the Senate and in the House.
Well, the majority of the American society is gonna be 70 pretty soon, dude. Baby boomers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. There's a lot of them.
Wrong you
But
said.
does the U.S. still have the U.S. though? I don't know what like the ratio is or anything, or the birth rate in the U.S. But do we have an older population? I don't think it's that
we
much.
do.
We did
compared to some
look at,
countries.
I mean, it's not as bad. Japan is really bad with an old but I'm not worried about Japan because they're fucking geniuses in Japan. Japan literally does everything right.
They do. I like Japan a lot. It's kind of funny.
Japan and then Denmark. Denmark's pretty sick too.
Denmark's pretty smart. Yeah.
Japan's one of my favorite spots. I love
Japan and Denmark, I think, are like the two most forward-thinking and like future-seeing countries we have on the planet.
For me, it's Switzerland. I think because I don't think any country runs their government perfectly, but if anyone comes the closest, it's Switzerland because they have direct democracy. They have autonomous states, so it's almost like, and they're very kind of. I mean, they are a bit like a little bit too like. I don't like how they don't. They like to kind of like separate themselves from a lot of international treaties. I'm not always a fan of that. But that's because they still put like the best interests of their people first. It's kind of like it's like the closest thing that we really have to like a classical liberal, like a libertarian democracy.
I just think
That's my opinion.
Denmark, Danish architecture is just, their architecture is next level. Like, they can solve flooding with infrastructure. And then the other thing is
That's more than Netherlands,
Japanese
though.
Japanese engineering is just insane. Like, they were the first ones to implement 200-mile-per-hour trains and maglev trains throughout the country. Like, they had the power to take over a good majority of China until all the other world powers basically shot them down. Like, throughout history, they've been a powerhouse. And if you look at the amount of space they have as an island, and they still have one of the most populated cities on the planet. Like, Japanese engineering is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, like they also have the largest percentage of robots to people in the country. There's like
Yeah,
one robot for every.
that's where the sex robots came from, bro.
It's just crazy to me. Like, their innovation in the engineering sector of the country is impressive. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And then like Nordic, like the Nordic countries and like Denmark, Switzerland,
now that you
they're
mentioned Sweden,
similar.
autonomous or a conglomerate of autonomous states, I'm very interested with the direct democracy. Like that sounds something that I would enjoy as a citizen. Like
Yeah.
I like that system.
Yeah, that would be cool. No, not Sweden, bro. I'm saying besides the Nordic countries, there's also Switzerland. Like, they're not too
Oh,
bad
okay.
either. Yeah. They
No,
got
I know
some
what you
good
mean.
ass
Same
food
thing.
there.
Ireland too. Ireland is really they've really changed the way their country's around because it was a more traditional conservative religious society for a lot of years, like the way a lot of Eastern Europe is still. But
Yeah.
now they're actually one of the most richest, and they even had an economic crisis. But right now they're like one of the richest and most progressive states in Europe. It's like Ireland's up there, the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, Nordic
Canada,
countries.
don't forget Canada. Canada's sick.
Canada's up there, New Zealand and
Canada's awesome.
Australia too.
Canada is like America, but like the government actually spends money efficiently, pretty much. That's the only difference. Their government spends money efficiently. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of like I think Australia and New Zealand people overlook them a lot. Like I think they run their country pretty well. Like you can see how just like now because New Zealand was able to rid their country of corona without even a vaccine. Like that's unreal. That's how
yeah.
efficient their government is.
All right, we're gonna move on to stock picks of the week.
Stock picks of the week. This is my favorite part.
All right, I guess I'll kick it off this time. All right, so my first stock is going to be United States Natural Gas Fund, and it's under the symbol or ticker UNG. It trades on the NYSE, and it is currently at $10. It's been steadily declining for a decade now, but it's had its ups and downs. If you go to a one-year chart, it's dropped from a peak of about 23. It currently sits at $10. I was told to buy this by a hedge fund. This is never my information when I give these little tidbits out. Anyway, it doesn't have a dividend, but I do see the stock rising.
Commodities lately, bro.
Yeah, I am, and I think this stock will go up only because of how much.
Oh, it's natural gas. Most of the U.S. is powered on natural gas.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. The natural gas one makes sense.
It's not changing anytime soon.
I almost did Denny's, but I also thought like retail was kind of risky at the moment, so I wasn't really gonna go into that one. But yeah, United States Natural Gas Fund (UNG), no dividend, but currently sits at $10, and it's at a buy on my page.
Yeah. So my stock pick of the week. So this stock is great for a long-term dividend portfolio, like dividend reinvestment. I think this stock will really pay off in the long term. Discover Financial Services. So currently they're trading at $55.59 per share. Their 52-week high is $92.98. They pay off a dividend. I think it's quarterly of $3.32. So that's pretty sick. Great long-term dividend investment if you're going for a dividend portfolio. Some people don't really care about that. They just want to do growth, 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 which is pretty risky in my opinion. I like to balance out growth and dividends. Uh, right now, I think our economy is rapidly reaching a place of inflation. So I definitely consolidated into a place of dividend reinvestment. And once that inflation is recognized by the stock market, that's when I'm going to invest back into my growth stocks. But if you do look at Discover, there was this nice little window over the past month that Discover was at. That's where I bought in, so I'm super happy with this stock right now. Super happy. Couldn't be better.
Yeah, I like the pick as well. Discover's a great company, and their consumer products are awesome as well. So I don't see that stock going down. It's definitely going to go up, and I like that it's got a $3 dividend.
Well, the other thing is, so Discover started as a credit card company, but they're they're developing student loan and debit card services, which means they're about to take on way more business. In the long term, student loans could lead to a lot of debt for the company, but we'll see how it goes. I'll, that's something definitely to keep an eye out for.
Alrighty.
And now we're into lessons of the week. Who wants to take it away?
I got a pretty fucking easy one, if I'm being honest.
All right.
All right. Really light-skinned people like myself. When you go to the beach, you have to bring at least SPF 30. It's not an item that is an option.
It's 30 enough.
It's a requirement. It should be at least 30. I mean, 30 does work, but I usually bring 50.
I feel like you probably need like 80, bro.
No, 50 works.
Is that even a thing? I feel like after 50, it's redundant.
Yeah, right.
80's definitely a thing. There are SPFs above 100, I'm pretty sure.
Anyway, it's not an option, people. You have to bring it. Know yourself. Definitely don't be a moron.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, check yourself before you wreck yourself. I have a gruesome sunburn.
Show it on the podcast.
Nah, I'm not gonna do that. You might be able to see it in my face. I'm like red right now. Anyway, just wear it. You'll be glad that you did in the end. And I'm unfortunately very upset right now because I didn't, and I've been being toasted for the last 3 days now, and even this podcast was painful to make for me. I told you guys before the show it was going to be a rough one.
Yeah, I was worried. Oh, I got a good one. So, I realized after visiting some close friends over this past weekend in a different state that that like different lifestyles can bring different attributes to growing. So like as I was growing up with them, I don't see them too often, but like I had these judgments previously made, but after seeing them most recently, like all I could see was how much more work they have to do with their lifestyle than I've had to do. And like it just blew my mind. Like it really refocused me. Like I've been putting my time into things like this, the podcast, and like reading books and stuff. But in terms of doing chores and working around the house and grocery shopping and cooking, I haven't really been doing any of that. And those are like serious life skills I need to know how to do when I'm living on my own. So I really need to start taking things like that a lot more seriously.
Like that one. That was good.
Yeah.
Alright, so the one I was thinking of, so I was just having like some discussions with some people today and also like yesterday, just like some of my close friends, just like because people I haven't seen in like a little while, so we were just thinking like we were just saying like talking about specific people we know and just like maybe problems we've had with them in the past. And someone brought up a good point that I really kind of stuck with me, and it's like saying that even people who have a negative influence on your life who you may not like you could still get something positive, like a lesson out of it. Like they may teach you an important lesson about yourself and about how you interact with other people, even if you didn't have a good experience with them. So I think there's always something that can be learned with people, even through a conflict, that can be kind of taken and applied to make your life better later.
I like that.
Yeah, that's really deep, man. I kind of had a similar realization not too long ago as well.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to call it there. That was Straight
Yeah.
No Chaser, episode 2. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. We're outie.
Peace.